What's up, y'all? I'm Kayla, this is my Big Easy Home, and today I am at Bywater Brew Pub with head chef and woman of many hats, Anh Luu. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today.
No problem. I'm excited.
Me too. So, Anh Luu, you cook the food of my soul. Will you please tell everybody, describe the food here at Bywater Brew Pub?
So the food that I make at the Bywater Brew Pub is, I like to call it Viet Cajun. It's a mashup of the two foods that I mainly ate as someone who grew up in New Orleans to Vietnamese immigrants. My mom used to cook with both flavors very often at home. I like to say that I make Cajun food, but with Vietnamese ingredients.
Okay, interesting. So that was a question that I had for you. Was that type of cuisine like organically happening in the Vietnamese household that you grew up in New Orleans?
Yes, very much. I mean, my mom would make dinner for us from scratch every night. We always had a family dinner. Her two favorite New Orleans dishes were red beans and rice and gumbo. And she would just use the flavors or whatever ingredients she had in her kitchen to replicate those things. I mean, she would go out and buy beans because like beans aren't really a staple in Vietnamese food, but instead of using like a smoked pork hock, she would maybe use like a Chinese sausage or something, or instead of salt, we used fish sauce. Instead of lemon, we used lime and accentuated it with lemongrass and ginger.
Yeah.
So I grew
that sounds
up,
so good.
yeah, I grew up with, I mean, you can just, it's kind of instinctive when you're a chef or you cook a lot with a certain cuisine. You can sort of like translate like, what is this ingredient comparable to?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a lot of what I do now when creating new dishes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, and I feel like I can do that with Cajun food, right? I can do that with the food that I grew up eating. There is no way that I could cook anything Vietnamese without a strict recipe because it's not instinctual, and I'm not familiar with the ingredients enough. So anytime I cook a food that's kind of outside of the flavors I'm used to, I have to follow a recipe.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's no holds barred. There are no rules. I just do whatever. I do whatever, right?
Yeah, do what you wanna.
Exactly. I love it.
That
Yes.
is my mantra in the kitchen.
She knows. I love it. So, people who are watching who aren't from New Orleans or haven't visited here may not know that New Orleans has a strong Vietnamese population and has for almost half a century now.
Yeah.
And one thing that I love about what's happening is it's not easy to break into the food culture here.
Yeah, no.
And I can think like maybe the last group that's done that in any significant way was the Italians until now, really starting to see the emergence of that Vietnamese influence coming in. And I think it speaks a lot to quality of Vietnamese cuisine and the flavors.
Yeah, it's very fresh.
Yes. And also just the natural cohesion between Louisiana flavors and the flavors of Vietnam.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many commonalities between Cajun cooking and Vietnamese cooking. Hanoi and New Orleans are actually on the same latitude, so they're considered sister cities, and so we grow a lot of the same produce that you're able to grow in Vietnam. We're both cities by the sea, so there's a lot of seafood in the cuisine, a lot of the same flavor profiles, spice, salt, citrus, cilantro, the parts of Vietnamese cooking that I try to impart on Cajun cooking are the fresh parts, because Cajun cooking is so heavy and thick and roux based. I'm kind of all about balance and keeping it fresh. I mean, I personally don't like to eat like super heavy things.
Yeah, me either.
But I like, a heavy sauce, but also balanced with like a salad or something acidic, or pickles or something like that. So I try to keep it fresh and light and not too crazy heavy with like a cream sauce on top of a fried thing.
Right.
Yeah.
How we like to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I love so much about Vietnamese cuisine is how light it is.
Yeah.
And you can eat a lot and not feel like you just eat a hand and your foot in one meal, you know?
Yeah. And Vietnamese food is really textural. Like, it's all about the springiness and the crunch and the chewiness of the meat, you know. A lot of like the grilled meats are meat that you gotta chew on, you know.
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
like super braised that is
Falling apart.
apart or kind of like mush, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, there's a lot of rice in both cuisines,
yeah.
and a lot of pork and seafood, and beef is a big thing in Vietnam. Yeah, so I just feel like the Cajun Creole flavors and the Vietnamese flavors just kind of go hand in hand together.
Yeah, I agree. It's my favorite. It's my favorite flavors of food. Is that mixed together?
And they both have French roots as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't realize how heavily French influenced Vietnamese food is because of like all the Asian ingredients in there. But one of the like, I don't know if it's absolutely true, but I think one of the stories that I've heard about how pho came to be was it is another iteration of the French pot de pho, and that's why it's called pho in Vietnamese.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just so everybody, like we're clear, like pho for me is the most perfect food ever created by the human race.
Yeah.
It is my absolute favorite.
I have
thing.
a tattoo of it on my back.
Oh yes. I love it. It's like right up there, just a little bit above gumbo for being like the most soul nurturing bowl of food that you can engage yourself with.
Definitely my death row meal.
Yeah, I
for
think
sure.
it would be mine too. Yeah.
It will forever remind me of my mother, you know?
Yeah.
My mother was sort of the root of my culture for me. I mean, I don't spend a ton of time around Vietnamese people in general in my line of work. Like, it's actually pretty hard to find a Vietnamese, like, line cook in town. I mean, if you go just like maybe at a Vietnamese restaurant, but like just around town, downtown, anywhere, you really don't see a lot of Asian cooks, you know. And so I wish that I could find them and have them, but it's like
Okay, so if you're Asian,
if you're a Vietnamese person
and you're a cook, and you want to
apply here.
there you go. Visit Anh Luu. She'll hook you up.
Well, because it's like I really value collaboration in my kitchen. I don't want to be the type of chef that's like barking orders and making, you know, micromanaging people and all of that stuff. I mean, being creative and also working a lot is not, they don't go hand in hand, you know?
I
So
agree.
it's like you need to enlist the help of the people that are actually cooking your food. And I love bouncing ideas off of people, and so like I haven't been lucky enough to have a Vietnamese person work with me closely in the kitchen, so a lot of it is me talking and everyone's like, yeah, that sounds great.
Right.
And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see. Yeah, I can definitely see like sort of the loneliness and also like
because
the value of having that. Yeah.
like I'm probably the opposite of most chefs, but I want to be in charge of a kitchen of chefs, not like be the chef of line cooks, you know? And I would much rather be in charge of somebody who's got the creativity initiative and like wants to play with food and cook stuff than like have somebody who doesn't want any of that, just wants to show up and be a robot.
Yeah, you want a team.
I want
You
a team. And
Cool. So one thing that you do that I also love is Vietnamese crawfish. We talked about this when we first met. So just like explain to people what Vietnamese crawfish what Vietnamese crawfish is in case they haven't had this yet.
So Vietnamese crawfish is typically, it's boiled the traditional Cajun way with the same seasonings in the crawfish, but then after it's boiled, it is stir-fried or sautéed with some kind of garlic butter, like a really citrusy, spicy garlic butter that has like lemongrass and ginger and stuff in it.
You had me at butter.
Yeah.
She had me at butter. I love it. I think it is absolutely delicious. I admitted this to you when I met you, and I'm going to admit this publicly right now. I almost like it more. I think I do like it a little bit more than the traditional Cajun way And part of that is something new, something familiar, but also new and exciting. And so it kind of, my mouth is comforted and confused at the same time. And I think that's a nice combination for keeping a fresh relationship with something.
Well, I feel like a lot of like people in New Orleans that grew up here, never having left or anything, are super traditionalists about all of their Cajun Creole fare. You know, like you can't put anything weird in a gumbo or else it's not gumbo type of thing.
Yes, no, I totally agree with that, and I think that's why it's so hard for any cultural group, no matter how great their food is, to break into that culture, because people mentally tend to be a little bit closed off to that.
Yeah, well, especially here, it's one of the oldest cities in America, so people are used to what their parents taught them, and they're used to what their parents taught them, and it's like passed down on from generations. But I think that is also something that is valuable about this city, and it's a big reason why I moved back here, because I mean, I lived in Portland, Oregon for 12 years, and it was great. I accomplished a lot of things as a chef there. The scene is much younger and more interested in playing with flavors. But there's not really like a restaurant family dynasty there, you know? It's like restaurants only last 10, 15 years there. But it's like incredible to see restaurants here that have been open for generations, like almost over 100 years, you know? And that's impressive. I mean, this industry is not an easy one to have, let alone have for generations of your family, and getting people in your family to want to continue the business. I mean, it's a hard business, and that's why I moved back here, because I was like, there's a different like culture and feel to when you go out to eat and all that stuff here. So it's fun to see the modern day cuisine like finally being incorporated in some older restaurants. Like I know that Commander's Palace just got their first woman head chef this year. Yeah,
I didn't know that. Wow, that's amazing.
They've been open for nearly like 130 years, and they've never had a woman be their executive chef.
Wow.
Yeah, and so she's around my age, and I think we have some mutual friends. I heard about her, and she's doing a lot of Vietnamese flavors and doing a lot of, you know.
I'm coming for you. I'm gonna interview you. I don't know where yet.
Yeah, she doesn't even know me, but like shout out to Meg.
We're gonna find you, Meg. Yes, we're stoked.
Yeah, so it's like really refreshing to finally see that it's happening. Like people are starting to accept it and be open-minded to it. And like it's the worst when you put all of your effort into this cool new thing that everyone's gonna love, and then they're like, well, this isn't traditional, I don't like it.
Right. Well, the ironic thing to me is that our food is born of the openness and the willingness, or the not having a choice but to mix cultural food together. And yet we're sort of like, it ain't broke, don't fix it, don't mess with a good thing, we don't need anything new. And so I'm happy to see that that's sort of softening. I'm gonna tell you something. Houston started doing this before we did.
Totally.
And I think what happened was Louisiana was like, wait a minute. Houston's doing something with food, with our food, and it's like we're not doing it. And I think it was finally like the push we needed to open ourselves up.
Did you ever see?
Like, I'm gonna do it.
Did you ever see that episode of Ugly Delicious? David Chang's. It's like years old. It's like 6 or 7 years old now.
Wait, which one is it?
The show on Netflix is
No, I know Ugly Delicious. Which episode?
It's like in the first season, I think it was called like Shrimp and Crawfish or something.
Okay, I think I did see that one.
Yeah, but it was all about
and
that
we did
phenomenon.
Talk about,
He came here and then he went to Houston and he tried to find out like why everyone wasn't doing the Viet Cajun crawfish, and he found out what we just talked about. People are traditionalists here, and it doesn't matter to them. It's what their family taught them. It is what they know. People don't like change or being different, unless you're, me. I need change and being different all the time.
I do too.
I don't like to eat the same foods all the time, and I don't like to cook the same foods all the time. But in the restaurant industry, you have to find a way to do that while keeping it consistent, because you don't want to change your menu up too much.
Right.
But I like to, every few months, I like to switch up components of dishes, but keep the dishes the same. You know?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's how I'm able to mix it up. And I have a recipe book, but sometimes I don't use it.
Yeah, I love that. Throw the book away.
Yeah,
Just
who
go with your
cares?
heart. Follow your heart, follow your gut, follow your experience.
Yeah, and I carry a lot of things from my cooking career and from my mother and from my sister, my aunt, and all throughout my cooking career, you know. So I try to be thoughtful about the fusion dishes that I make, because like a lot of times when you go to a fusion restaurant that you don't know the person or you don't know their story or whatever, it feels inauthentic. It feels like they just slapped two things that they liked together on the plate, but not for a reason. It's like you can't just slap like nook jum on the same plate as like harissa because you think those two sauces are tasty, you know?
Or it makes a good name for a dish or something crazy.
But I'm glad to see that Vietnamese food now is becoming kind of like the sushi of the early 2000s, you know?
Nice.
It's like the new trendy Asian food. Like Vietnamese and Filipino food is like really coming up right now, and it's so awesome because, you know, like growing up as a Vietnamese person or a Filipino person, it's like either you ate that kind of food at your house or you went to like a crappy hole in the wall where the server was like pretty rude to you, but that's normal, but the food is so delicious, so we're just gonna go here. But it's like, no, it's like the cuisine is being elevated now because it's being served to a wider audience and in nicer settings, you know? Like, who doesn't love a hole-in-the-wall restaurant? I do.
I do too.
But that image is what keeps the cuisine like down there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you can't make people pay lots of money for it because they think that it's just food from a shitty hole in the wall. You know what I mean? So it's not very cheap to make Vietnamese food because it's so fresh and there's a lot of vegetables involved and like a lot of care as the person cooking it and keeping the ingredients fresh, you know? And that is priceless. Like, you can't do that forever if you can't charge more than $10 for your bowl of pho. You know what I mean?
And we've gotten so used to cheap food, frankly, that we've missed the connection between paying for quality. And I mean, I have a ridiculous grocery bill because for one person, but I like to buy fresh, I like to eat fresh, I like to buy local, I like to eat local, I like to buy organic. I value the quality of the food that I become, frankly, you know, it's what becomes me.
Exactly.
And so, I think this like $1 menu phenomenon has really dumbed our palate down and made us not really appreciate what quality actually costs.
Our food here, I try to keep really affordable because of the neighborhood we're in and part of town, and you know, we're a little bit in a food desert. The only grocery store is the Robert's down the street, and it's not really a real grocery store. It's mostly a big liquor store that has like prepared foods.
Welcome to New Orleans.
You know? And it's just there's no other grocery store in this neighborhood, and so it's kind of hard to get the fresh food if you have to go to a restaurant. You know? For your food in the neighborhood. And so I try to keep it really fresh and cheap because that's the community that we're trying to serve. But that doesn't mean I'm gonna cut corners or buy pre-made fries. You know, it's like I'm gonna make a French fry, making it from scratch.
Nice, love it.
I mean, we make all of our buns from scratch here. From the beer that we brew, we make all of our potato chips from scratch. Like every sauce is made from scratch, and I don't know how to be any other way as a chef.
And that's the kind of food preparation that I really appreciate, and I think you can taste it. I think it becomes obvious when you frequent places that you can discern which places are really taking the care to do things from scratch, to use fresh ingredients, and places that are cutting corners or buying things frozen or pre-made this or whatever. So I appreciate it. I thank you so much for upholding that standard for all of us. When did you know you wanted to be a chef?
Gosh, I knew pretty young. I've been doing this since I was 16, and I kind of knew when I was 15. I don't know why. It just like, I was like, I think that I want to get into cooking. I mean, I was always kind of artistic, and I liked drawing, and I went to art school and stuff, but like, it never really fulfilled that passion that I felt for cooking. And I got my first job as a line cook when I was a junior in high school, and luckily, because New Orleans is about who you know,
very much so.
Like one of my friend's parents like was a part owner of a chain of restaurants here, that were a local chain, and the place that I first got my job at is no longer open, but it was
no more.
It was called Vaqueros. It was like a kind of higher end Mexican place. Like you could get nachos and tacos, but you could also get like a shrimp and polenta or like a stuffed pork chop. Yeah,
nice.
It was cool.
Yum.
And then I moved to pizza after that, and then I got kind of sick of cooking because you really don't get paid very well as a cook. So I went to the front of the house and worked as like a host and a server and stuff before I moved to Portland in 2009 to go to culinary school. And then I was pretty much cooking the whole time I was there in Portland. I lived there for nearly 12 years. But there was a stint where I was sort of like, I was working at this crazy like Japanese izakaya that was called Tanuki. It's also no longer there. But it was only 18 seats, and I was basically like the second in charge of the whole place because it was just one lady. Her name's Janice. She's still a friend of mine. She cooked. She was the only one that cooked, and then I literally did everything else.
Wow.
Like I would come in to help her prep, and then we opened at 5. I would come in like 5 hours before my shift to help her prep because she made everything like fresh that day. It was like Korean and Okinawan drinking food. That's what she called it.
Okay.
So it was like kind of a bar. You had to be 18 to get.
Awesome.
You had to be 21 to get in.
Yeah. Okay.
And so like I was like the bouncer and the waitress and the bartender and the dishwasher and the food runner and the sous chef. Like I was everything there, and it really prepared me for the rest of my career up until this point. Yeah, because if you don't know how to do all those things, then you're probably not going to be very successful in the restaurant industry if you want to really invest in it and be in it for a long time. Yeah, you need to understand how the whole machine works.
It's true. And I think a lot of people underestimate how difficult it is to run a restaurant and to be successful and to be profitable. And a lot of people get into it with a naivete and a sort of dreamy-eyed idea of what being a restaurateur and having a great restaurant will be like, but the practicality and the real life day-to-day is hard. And it's why a lot of restaurants don't, like something like 80% of restaurants
don't make it.
Make it.
And it's really nice to see like there's sort of a service industry uprising happening right now with wages, because in Louisiana, tipped employees you only have to pay tipped employees $2.13 an hour.
Yes, $2.13 an hour. So if you are watching this as someone who will be coming to Louisiana for your vacation or your leisure time, and you are unaware that the person serving you your meal, the person mixing your drink for you, those folks are making $2.13 an hour.
That's not what's happening here, though.
Yeah.
I mean, we pay all of our servers $10 an hour plus their tips, and like, I came from Portland, Oregon, where the minimum wage 3 years ago was $12 an hour, and everybody had to get paid that, no matter if you were a tipped employee or not. And so I moved here with that outlook on the industry, and I was like, I'm just not down for exploiting the people that work here. Like, I told the owners, like, I don't want to be that chef if that's what you're expecting. And they were on the same page with me, so it's been really, really great. We have a lot of people that live in this neighborhood working here, and yeah, the neighborhood is really
Embraced you?
Yeah, like we have regulars and people that live around the corner come like 2 or 3 times a week.
I love it.
Yeah, so it's really great to see, like, because this is one of the oldest neighborhoods in New Orleans, it's great to see everybody embracing this kind of like weird fusion that they're unfamiliar with, you know? Yeah.
Just wait.
Yeah.
In like 10 years, it's gonna be just like so normal that we're never gonna remember a time that it wasn't a part of our culinary culture.
Right.
So we have that in common. And then I went to the West Coast for a while, and I lived. You lasted a lot longer than me. I was home within 5 years.
It's hard out there. It's especially if you're from down here.
Yeah.
It is a different planet.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So that was my question. Like, it wasn't until I moved away from South Louisiana that I really understood how different it is, and it does feel like a different planet. So, like, did you have a moment when you realized, wow, I come from a place that's just different?
Yeah, I mean, like, pretty much the first 6 months that I lived in Portland, I was like, wow, where did I just move to?
Same. The exact same question I asked myself.
Come back here, like, immediately,
Yeah.
and then I got stuck there because my career sort of kept getting better and I was accomplishing all this stuff. I didn't really have a reason to move back necessarily until I was looking to sell my restaurant that I owned. And it was very, this is the story about how I came to realize that I needed to move home. So when I was in high school, I went to high school with the owner of a company that owns Crawfish Monica at Jazz Fest.
Okay.
I went to high school with the owner's daughter. Her name's Brooke. She's awesome.
Hey, Brooke.
So I used to work at the Crawfish Monica tent at Jazz Fest every year with them, and Jazz Fest is my favorite New Orleans thing to do. And so when I moved to Portland, my Cajun Creole restaurant that I was working at and then eventually bought, that was the busiest time of year for us, so I could never get away and come to Jazz Fest. So I literally didn't go to Jazz Fest for 10 years.
Wow.
And I finally in 2019, I was like, I have to go to Jazz Fest this year or else I might not be well.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, I need it in my
It's
life.
a mental health
Experience, right?
Yeah.
So in 2019, I came back and I was only here for like 4 or 5 days. Got the first weekend of Jazz Fest down. It was raining, but I was like, I don't care. I love this. Yeah. And so on my way to the airport, I saw a good friend of mine who was one of my managers at Krabby Jack's when I worked there right before I moved to Portland. And I was talking to her about, like, you know, how life was going. I was owning my own Viet Cajun restaurant in Portland as well. And, you know, it was just getting really hard. A lot of things happened. Like, I had some personal trauma that happened the same week that I bought the restaurant. And it was just, I was using work as a way to grieve, but, you know, that really doesn't work out for you.
Yeah.
And I moved home to heal. But on my way out, talking to my friend, she was like, why don't you just move home? And I was like, it was like an epiphany. And I was like, you're right. I should just move home. And like the whole week I was back in Portland, I was like crying every day because I missed New Orleans. And then that week I was like, I'm going to put my restaurant on the market. I can no longer survive here in this state. I needed a place where I felt connected to. I mean, like, Portland, my sister has been living there since I was in middle school. She's much older than me, and that's where my parents settled after Katrina. So, like, Portland reminds me of my mother, but, like, this was her favorite city. And when you're from here, there's nothing in the world that can take that out of you, you know? So I knew I needed to move back here to get back to my normal self. And so I listed my restaurant that same week I got back from Jazz Fest, and it took about 6 months for somebody to want to buy it. And then I miraculously was able to sell it the September of 2019, right before COVID and all that shit happened. So I felt like someone's looking out for me up there, you know, Mama Lou, hey.
Hey.
Yeah, so she's obviously not with us anymore, but yeah, she always talked about wanting to move back to New Orleans before they actually could. So I kind of needed to do that for her.
I love that. Yeah, it is an epiphany kind of moment when you've been away and you're entrenched in this new life and your heart is home and you have that moment where you realize, oh, I can just go back home.
Yeah.
And it feels very liberating.
Yeah, I mean, even though I don't have any family here, like physical family in New Orleans, like the whole city is my family. You know, like I felt the embrace like as soon as I got back. As soon as I got back, I was like, I'm back. You know?
What's your favorite thing about being back?
The weather.
Interesting answer.
Everyone complains about the humidity, but like, I'm sorry, but I would much rather have rays of sunshine every day and be a little sweaty and hot than like clouds, misting rain all the time, gray. You know, like that was really making me depressed. And it's true, the weather like affects your mood. And just because the sun is shining here most of the time, it like makes me physically feel better. I have like a vitamin D deficiency when I lived in Portland. My doctor was like, you need to take vitamin D pills. And I was like, I've never had to do this before. And it affects your mood.
It does, absolutely.
Seasonal affective disorder is real. It's a thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the humidity here is really good for your skin.
It is.
In the just like the dry. I mean, I lived in California, so the weather was great and it was sunny a lot, but the dry air really started to affect me, and I do like the humidity. I complain about it, and but I like it.
Yeah.
It does
I mean,
feel
a
good
summer
to me.
shower here is so different than like the constant rain of the Pacific Northwest.
Absolutely.
Like I like when it rains really hard for 30 minutes and then it's so sunny again and the sun is so bright and shiny that the streets are dry after like an hour after it rained, you know? It's like, oh, it's like it never even rained today. This is great.
I love New Orleans.
Yeah,
Such a great,
I like wearing sandals and tank tops.
yes,
and shorts.
I do too.
You know?
If I can't be barefoot like 9 months out of the year,
Right?
I'm not in a good place. So
I like doing
completely
swimming any time of the year that I went to.
Yeah. We really do. For as much as we complain about the heat and the humidity, we really have amazing weather most of the year.
Yeah.
It's just summer kind of leaves a strong impression.
And I'm Vietnamese, like, my people are tropical.
Right.
And I'm a tropical Asian. So it's like, I need to be hot sometime in the year.
Your DNA is fed by that. No, I feel the same. I feel the same
And
way.
it's something different about like eating food in hot weather. I feel like even when it's 100 degrees outside, I'm still craving a hot bowl of pho or some kind of soupy thing.
Yeah.
And
I'll eat a hot bowl of pho.
exactly. Even when it's hot outside, it's fine. There's something about, I don't know, having your cold cocktail with your drink on a patio, like the experience of dining outside in New Orleans is different than like, say, Portland. You know?
I love it. Yeah. It's just different here, you know. It's just different.
Yeah, and all the people too. Like I miss just like the interactions of strangers because everyone has a wild story to tell you every day.
It's true. It is true.
Yeah, and it's like you never know, and you learn something new every day, and there's like crazy characters that kind of like brighten your day or put your life in perspective for you often. You know, it's the real world here.
I do appreciate how easy it is to just have conversation with people here, whether you know them or not. And it does give you entrance into other people's story and other people's wisdom. And that's a beautiful gift that we can share with each other. And in some places, people are just a little more to themselves, and they're more reserved, and they look at you funny if you try to strike up a conversation, say at the supermarket, which was my experience out west, you know. And I missed that feeling like I could just start talking to anyone, and they would not think that was a weird thing.
Yeah, or look at you like, are you talking to me?
Yeah, like do we need to call the straight jacket people because you're behaving very oddly.
Yeah, I mean, even when you just ask a random stranger on the street for the time, they'd be like,
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I know.
I guess I'll tell you the time.
It felt
you
very
know?
hard to like just make friends, you know.
Yeah.
And I find that was a little bit easier for me here. Yeah.
I also appreciate how diverse the city of New Orleans is with like having people of all different shades of skin color here
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
people who speak different languages and